Hello to my second grade friends again. It's Mrs. Villa, and I'm back to read another story to you. I hope you enjoyed the last one. Today we're going to be reading what we would have been reading in class if we were together, our next shared story, which is Helen, Keller, and the Big Storm. So I am reading this for educational purposes only, and I do not own the rights to this story. The author is Patricia Lakin, and the illustrator is Troy Howell. So if you have your book at home and you want to get it, we're on page 128. But if you don't have it, don't worry. You just follow along with us. Okay, and the genre of this story, I love saying that word. Let's everyone say genre. And that's such a fun word to say, genre. Okay, the genre is a narrative nonfiction, and it tells the story of true events. So we're going to read about a true event from the life of Helen Keller. And it's really important to know what the genre is, especially when the illustrator used different kinds of techniques for the illustrations. You'll notice that this doesn't look like photos, does it? It looks like maybe they used paint or something. Yeah, but it is a non-fiction story, so true events, guys. Okay, and the question we can think about while we're listening and reading is, what lesson does Helen learn? Here we go. Little Helen Keller loved smelling roses and honeysuckle. They grew all around her Alabama home. But most of all, Helen loved playing pranks. When she was 6, she had done her best prank yet. Mama had walked into the kitchen pantry. Quickly, Helen felt for the key and click! Helen locked Mama inside. Helen didn't always have the chance to take charge like that. Mama and Papa tried hard to understand her, but many times no one knew what she wanted. Helen could get so angry. She would kick and hit and fall into a heap. Afterward, she ran outside. She threw herself onto the cool, comforting grass. The flowers, trees, grass, warm sun, and gentle wind always made Helen feel better. Helen was never punished for her pranks and tantrums. Mr. and Mrs. Keller thought Helen had been punished enough. Their daughter could not hear, see, or talk. Guys, can you imagine that for a minute? If you couldn't hear, see, or talk. That's what it was like for Helen. So hard to imagine. So their daughter could not hear or see or talk. But that pantry prank forever changed Helen's life. The Kellers now knew that Helen needed more than they could give her. She needed special lessons from a special teacher. Helen's teacher was Annie Sullivan. She came to live with the Kellers. Helen was not ready to trust this stranger, and she was not ready to give up her pranks. She locked Annie inside her room, and this time Helen hid the key. That prank made Annie see just how clever Helen was. No matter what Helen did, Annie did not give up. And I love this, guys. These are actual photos you can see of Helen. Beautiful. Slowly, day by day, she worked with Helen. Annie taught Helen by pressing her fingers into Helen's hand. Annie's fingers spelled out the names for the things Helen loved. Grass, flowers, leaves, trees, bugs, butterflies, sun, wind, rain. In a short time, Helen loved doing her lessons more than doing her pranks. You guys should try that with someone at home. Pick a word like sun or something, and have your mom or dad or brother and sister put their hand out and have them close their eyes, and with your finger write the letters S-U-N, and see if they can figure out what it was. That's what Annie Sullivan was teaching Helen how to do in this paragraph. Okay. Soon, the out of doors became Helen's classroom. One summer day, Helen and Annie took a long walk. On their way home, the air grew hot and sticky. Helen and Annie stopped to rest under a wild cherry tree. The tree blocked them from the burning hot sun. Its leaves fanned them with a gentle, cooling breeze. Helen felt its strong, low branches. They were just right for climbing. Annie and Helen decided to do just that. Sitting high in the tree, they had a resting place to stay cool. It was a perfect spot for a picnic. Have any of you guys ever had a picnic or been on a picnic? I have. We've done it at a park before where we've taken some sandwiches and snacks and played at the park and then just ate at the park on a blanket. Yeah. Annie headed for the house to make the lunch. She made Helen promise not to move an inch. Helen wouldn't think of moving. She loved sitting high up in that tree. Helen breathed in the wonderful scent of the cherry tree. She stroked its rough bark and its smooth green leaves. She let the cooling breeze blanket her. Ooh, what a cool sentence. She let the cooling breeze blanket her. It means like she let the air around her like a blanket. But in seconds, Helen's world turned upside down. The sun disappeared. Helen's face was slapped with a cold, sharp wind. The scent of flowers was gone. Her nose was filled with another smell. This one was not so sweet. Guys, and we have to remember, Helen cannot see, hear, or talk. So her sense of touch and smell is very important to help her figure out what's going on. Her nose was filled with another smell. This one was not sweet. It came up from the deep, dark earth. It told Helen that a storm was near. Helen began to feel the shaking of the leaves. Twigs rained down, scratching her face, arms, and legs. Gosh, how scary would that be, guys? To be in a tree all of a sudden and then have these different smells come and the wind come and slap you in the face and get these scratches. Would you be scared? I would be scared. Tree limbs swayed. The wind whipped through the branches. The wind whipped around Helen. The wind tried to rip Helen right out of that tree. Helen grabbed onto the shaking branch. She clung to it with all of her might. Helen sat frozen. I mean, she did not move, right? She was trapped. She could not see. She could not call for help. She could not hear if help was on the way. Helen had never felt so alone or scared. She couldn't understand how the gentle things she loved could turn against her. What do you guys think that means? Let's see. She couldn't understand how the gentle things she loved could turn against her. Remember, what was it that she loved? She loved being outside, and she was always safe there. And now all of a sudden, she's in the middle of this storm, and all these bad things are happening to her that had not happened before. So that's what the author is trying to let us know in that sentence, that she didn't understand how all the things she loved could turn against her. Suddenly, out of the cold, whipping wind, Helen felt a hand. It was a strong, warm hand. It belonged to Annie Sullivan. Annie grabbed hold of Helen. Helen let go of the branch. She clung to Annie. She let Annie guide her down and out of that tree. Helen learned a great deal that day. She felt she had felt the power of nature. It could turn from gentle to fierce in seconds. Helen also learned about the power of friendship. Annie Sullivan would always be there for Helen Keller. This is an illustration that it looks like maybe the illustrator used paint, but we can see that this is a real photo. And if you don't have your book, I just hold up how beautiful, of Helen and Annie. And then here's what's called a caption. It explains what you see in the photo here. Helen Keller and Annie Sullivan were friends all of their lives. Helen went on to become a talented writer who always worked to help others. And then that just kind of gives us a little bit more information about how they're still working together here. Okay. All right, my loves. And so that is Helen Keller and the Great Storm. I really suggest going, especially if you have your book, going through these questions with your family at home so you can talk about the story and maybe some connections. And then don't forget to try giving your family member or friend, someone that you're at home with, a word and write it on their hand and see if they can figure out what word you were trying to have them spell out, okay? Okay, I can't wait to read to you guys again. I love you more than coffee, and I will be back soon. Bye, guys.